Hey guys, good morning to you. For me, it is 7 in the morning, very early. Um, and these are, if it's the first time, these are the live Q&A of the DPA. Thank you so much for joining in. If you are in the chat, let me know if you see me well, hear me well. I want to say hi to Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia. Since you're there, Cynthia, I'll be covering your work first. So thank you so much for joining in. If you've been looking at those for quite a while, maybe you realize that there's a little difference in the camera. I just purchased a new camera, so pretty happy with that. It gives that beautiful blurry effect. So yeah, I'll be covering the work of you guys that have been sent to me. Thank you so much for sharing your work with me. And I'll start with Cynthia. If you are in the chat, if you send me your work here in the chat, let me know. This way I'll be covering your work first if you are in the chat. Also, I said last month that I would change the time, and I will. It's just this month was impossible for me to do it later, so I'm doing it at the same time. But I promise for the people that are in Europe, I'll try to change the time next time. Just right now, I'm in Chiang Mai. The time zone is very different than everybody else, almost except for the people who are in Asia or in Australia. This is probably a better time for them. Anyway, um, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, it's crazy what a lens can do. So, all right, let me start this. I'm just going to share my screen here. And like I was saying, Cynthia, since you're there, I'll start with your work and I'll cover the work of um, Flame afterwards. I don't know. Why is that so big? Okay, give me a second here. It's pretty big. Okay, wait a minute. That's new. Whoa. That's big. Can I change that? Just give me a second here. That's very weird. That's that. There you go. No. All right. Back to live mode. It's 2 a.m. here. Oh wow. Josuke, thank you so much for joining. I'm so sorry. Like I said, next month I'll have something that works better for everybody. And sorry, I'm not taking my time here. It's just I'm having a giant window in front of me that the software that I'm using, Ecamm, is putting on my face. And there you go. All right, made it smaller. And perfect. All right, so Cynthia, beautiful work. Also, guys, let me know if you. I'm assuming you guys see me well now that I have a beautiful camera, but if you hear me well, let me know if the microphone is okay. So Cynthia, uh, I really wish you would have sent me the work before. Like I have I remember it a little bit, so I know you did quite some work on it. So congrats on that. This is looking good. But I would love to be able to do that before and after. So next time, you can do this. But if I'm looking at it, I really like it. I like the subtleties. And I think that was the issue last time, for what I remember. It's the subtleties where you're able to pick up the values and the colors within the shadow. Like the hair here, it's very nice. The subtleties in the skin. I would say that the highlights here on the ear are a little bit too high. I don't think like they look too contrasty. Let me see what I could do here. If that's a word, too contrasty. Jeffrey from Saskatchewan. Hey, good morning. Is it good morning? No, it's pretty good night for you. Yeah. Good evening. So yeah, so like I was saying, just maybe the contrast here is just a bit too bright. Especially as a portrait, you don't need to attract the eye of the viewer really there. And it's also because I think the contrast would be just a little bit more softened. So I think that's better here. Um, this is good, although this is looking like a bit like a line. I'm assuming that maybe if we were to just kind of make that shadow just a little bit more, soften up the transition, it would just look a little bit better. You know, so from there to there, small changes here, just kind of round up, you know, that whole transition. I'm going to use the mixer brush tool here to kind of soften up this as well. Same thing here, the transition here is a bit too harsh. Don't need it to be so harsh. And I'm wondering if anatomy wise, which I had a piece of anatomy, if this line would actually be a little bit more high. I think it would be a little bit more high. But as you can see, I'm moving just small details. I think at this point you have something very nice. Much better than last month. Jeffrey says, I'm assuming you wanted to say if the goal on this one is photorealism, I'd say it definitely needs the lighter value amped up. What do you mean by amped up? I'm not used with that word, Jeffrey. Personally, I'd say if amped up means just toned down, probably. There's a lot of contrast here. And although you could definitely have a look at reference pictures, I don't know if you have a reference pictures for this one, but if you had a reference picture for this one, I'm sure you would have maybe some high contrast in there. But it's not just the value here, it's also the crisp of the change, the change of contrast in the strokes. Like they're probably gonna fade out and become just a little bit more blurry to one end, and not have them so sharp necessarily. Brighter the lighter value. That's funny. I think the values, when it comes to brighter value, I think here definitely I think they're bright enough to me. I think there's too much contrast, and that's the issue mostly. Then again, I don't have the reference picture, so I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like as the arm is rounded, you'll have definitely like those contrasts in the clothing, but you would still feel like a gradation that will be like a little bit more soft, I guess. Like things like here, for example, could be just a little bit more soften, so they feel like they're clothing. You know, clothing will have like those little bumps. Same thing here. I'm not sure these would catch any light, especially that the background is purely black at this point, so it doesn't tell us if there's like any fill light, any second light source. And that's the thing that you could definitely add. I think that you could have maybe I'm gonna just try something here. Bear with me. I'm gonna take just like a pale gray and kind of just having that here. I'm gonna put it here. And you can see that just that, I'll be able to see that on screen, but just that will give us the understanding that there's a light source in front of him, and that could help. For the jacket, I was going for leather. Look and Move seems to have sharper lines for the highlights. You know, definitely sorry, looking for the words. It's very early for me. The fabric will have a drastic change, and when it comes with leather, because it's so shiny, there's almost specular highlights on leather because it's very, very shiny. So yeah, no, definitely, and it feels like that. I'd say definitely. Maybe the one thing that I would add to make it feel like it's even more leather, it's having like some sort of a texture brush. I'm trying to think about what texture brush I could have. Maybe just this one could have done something. And let me just blow it out here so you understand. Um, Maybe just some texture brush here. Like you see, it doesn't need to be much more texturized than this, um, because leather is not purely smooth. You have all those little. Take a saffron brush here for an eraser. Leather has those. Um, yeah, leather is skin, right? And skin has pores and cracks and all of that. Um, so you would have some texture, and this is going to help. But yeah, I think overall it feels like it could be leathery. It's just depending on what's the reference picture that you've been using. For me, it feels a little bit more like it's paper at this point. And that's my issue here, because the folds are so sharp. It almost feel like it's a piece of paper that's been wrapped up. But it's like you would have to just soften up a little bit more, and then it would feel like it's fabric, something like leather for sure. Like these cut right here, that's too sharp. Even leather would not do that, except if it's like very, very old leather and it's very, very thin, which I'm assuming a jacket could be, but usually a jacket is a little bit more thick. So you would have some of the fold would be like sharper for sure. Most of the fold would be a little bit more rounder. But it still felt much better than the one that I remember, like that subtle blue in there. That subtle blue, I think this is great because it gives you like what you need to do for the storytelling, which is the face. Definitely the knife here is important. Maybe the knife could have a brighter value because it's such an important piece of this illustration. Let me just see. Just so we see it, and then could have that highlight a little bit more, and then maybe just using something like well, I could probably use just white because it's a black background, but just something like, I'm gonna create a new layer for this, something like that makes it shiny here just a little bit, so it's catching the light. Could be interesting because it's a very important part of this illustration. And I don't know if I said that last week, but yeah, one thing that you could have done is just have just a rim light. Maybe you don't even have to do it like everywhere. It could be just like, it could just be at the top. But let me see if I can do this. Just gonna do this here. Just something to actually make a even more sharp, maybe. Just something to separate this guy from the background here. And it's on its own layer now, so I'll be just able to just kind of tone it down here a little bit. And tone it down here a little bit. And you know what, I'm at it. I'm just going to maybe add just something like that. And just something, I don't know if that's exactly what should be done, but I think just a rim light, some sort of light that comes from the other side will round the shape of this character and make it pop from the background. Irida says it reads velvet, and that's the softness, I think. Yeah, it could be that also. Like the texture would really help with the fabric itself, texture in the brush. Skin works great with leather. Yes. Good suggestion. Didn't even see the knife. Yeah, exactly. So making it like just like a little bit more apparent the knife would really help. But overall, this is looking great. If you continue working on this, Cynthia, please send us the steps. This is always super fun to see the progress that you have to do. But that's probably what I would do. Things like, you know, like if you have like a light here that comes, and you have clearly like a zone here, that's the shadow. You have to remind yourself one thing. On this side, you know, let me just create a. On this side, you have like the arm that would finish here, okay? And so all here is going to be softened because this is a form shadow. But what you have here, that's going to be a cast shadow, right? And even if it's very dark and you're playing with the fact that it stays dark and it's like just illuminated slightly except for the face to have that dramatic effect, which is, I think, is really cool. You have to remember that you would have a hard cast shadow here, and that's going to help you. Like, this is supposed to be harder, no matter, like, just boost it a little bit so we sit more on screen, but you know, like, that's going to be a hard casted shadow here. That's going to be casted by the arm, and that's going to fade out afterwards, right? But just so you understand, I'm going to take out this. So this is too much. This is just for you to see, but it's just I was seeing that your shadow here is a little bit too soft. So just think about what is casted, what is form shadow, and the casted shadow usually will be sharper in most cases, except if you have like a very soft light, or that you have many light source that form like a softer cast shadow. But in this case, it looks pretty much like you have just one light source coming up from the front. So that would be a cast shadow. And it's going to help also just adding some visual interest here and there. So hopefully this was it was helpful. Great job with it all, and keep pushing it. This is really going well. All right, thank you so much for sharing, Cynthia. I'm going to put that all together. Next, I'm going to cover the work of Flame. Flame, I don't know if you're there. Flame, I asked you to pass me your reference pictures, and you did, so thank you so much. Just a reminder to everybody that if you give me your reference picture, it's easier for me to understand what you're trying to establish. So that's great, and you showed me all of these. And I was particularly happy that you showed me because that's what I wanted to verify, if you had just one, because these, very complex, but I like the challenge that you give yourself. I don't know how much it's done. Right now, the fold in her face make her look like she's a very old person. And that's because of the contrast, right? So what happens when you're getting older is that your skin becomes thinner, less elastic. And so when you're going to make fold, that's where you have like all those folds on your face, right? And you will have those crevasses that are so deep that they form very contrasty lines because you have occlusion shadow in all those cracks, right? And when you're a kid, if you look here, like there's like, yes, in the corner of the eye, yes, but not here. You see not the nose, definitely not. Like you have those here, but you see how pale they are compared to the contrast, and that's a huge thing, right? So to make it just look more like a kid, I would soften up all of those lines. So I'm just gonna create a new layer here, and I'm gonna try to keep like this example here because I'm assuming that's the one you've been following. So that's great. Oops, bear with me. Bear with me. Let's move this, let's move that. Okay, let's get back here. Got the AC here. So I'm just gonna try to soften up what I'm seeing. You should have just less contrast overall. I'm just gonna paint on the overall nose for now. Hey Carl, good evening to you too. Let's just continue here. Jeffrey says, this is the face that I'm making when I eat lemons. Yeah, I don't know why people eat lemons in the first place, though. It's not a fruit like an apple, you know? But yeah, I eat a lot of limes and lemon too, but mostly in like dressings and cheese and whatever. But I'm assuming there's people that just probably like eat that like an apple. Must be very sour. All right, so here I wanna tone down the folds, but I don't want to lose the expression. I don't want to lose the interest here. I just want to take out the contrast a little bit. Just a little bit, so it feels like she's a, I don't know how old is that person. Question to all of you. How old do you think that kid is? I guess is like 6. I don't have a kid yet. I'll be working on that eventually, and then I'll be able to answer those questions. But for now, I'm asking you guys, let me know. I'm assuming that's a 6 years old. Really, Carl? All right. I guess yeah. I guess that's it. That's a thing a kid would do. You know, just experimenting with the world. It's a fruit. Why not? You know. All right. So what do we have from this to this? It's already much better. I think. It express the same expression, but without too much contrast. Thank you, Emily. Thank you. So I guess I was not so bad. I got it right. Um, then you would have definitely like just a little bit more like roundness here. These seems to be like a little bit more. Those nostrils are too big here. I don't know if you like took all your reference for this one on this little face. It seems like too, but I could be wrong. There's a lot of lights bouncing here and there. Like the contrast between this and this, right? If I put it into black and white, you'll see it right away, I think. But you can see that this is much lighter than this part. Then again, right, the darker skin versus more pale skin, but the contrast within the same skin would be the same, right? So I guess the thing that to contrast is from there to there compared to there to there. The contrast is much higher here, so that's the one thing. Wow, Emily, that's amazing. I just see that someone says, Cynthia says, 9, you're champion. Definitely. I thought you had a 9-year old, but this was looking 4 or 5. Wow, 9 kids. That's amazing. That's amazing. You know what? You just got the record. I think we had one other student in the academy. She had 6 kids. But yeah, you just got the first position. Congratulations, 9 kids. So let me see from there to there. Hopefully this is much better, I think. So I think that was the only really thing that I wanted to show. Like just like contrast is very important to attract your eye, right? And so if you're putting lots of contrast on just those skin detail, that's where your eye is gonna go right away. But even on a portrait, I think, you know, like you should have more contrast on probably the eyes, features, the lemon, obviously. Like I'm seeing that you're not done here. You did like the skin, which is great. But I think that's the one thing. I think you contrast in probably all your skin right here. It feels like you have like a frontal light source, like a flash, for example, and a flash would create very hard shadow at certain places. Um, like this kid has probably like a window in front of him or something like that that acts as a frontal light, but still the contrast should be a little bit. And the lips here Could be just overall a little bit more dark, I think. Although now she looks like she has sort of makeup. If I'm looking at the skin here, for example, I think the skin, because I'm assuming a 4 years old could have makeup, but we're not going to put makeup on her. It's a bit early in age. Emily, you let me know if your kids are wearing makeup at that age. I'm assuming not. Or maybe for Halloween. I don't know. You let me know. But I feel like if there were natural lips, they would be just a little bit more looking like a shade of their skin tone. And here you have a very nice like pink that comes from inside. Something a little bit more dark maybe here. So just a mix of everything. Like he has like very, very red lips, but that's not something that all kids have. I would assume. See, that's a bit more pale. Sorry, I'm catching up with the chat. You're 13 years old, just got permission. Yeah, 13 years old, I'm assuming. Yeah, you know, you're starting your teenage hood. So yeah. Oh my god, that's hilarious. All right, so I think that's pretty good. So Flame, I think I would work on that first. I could add like all the details in the hair and everything. You got tons of videos for that in the academy, so I won't do this. I think the one thing, it's just a contrast of the skin. Just be mindful of the contrast for the skin, um, the lips, and all that. Try to just make her look like um, like a 5, 6 years old kind of thing. One thing that I like that you did, I was about to look at this image right here, and I really like the pink that she has in her skin tone, and the skin tone kind of fits what you're trying to do here. But you did put a yellow background here, and so it makes perfect sense that your highlights would have that yellow, even your shadow would have that yellow, depending. Like I imagine like she's just like in a yellow environment kind of thing. So that works very well. You could have tried to modify it, but I think that's already working pretty well. So that's it. Thanks for sharing. This is looking great, and keep up the good work. All right, next we have the work of, I think I'll be able to just go in one window here. The work of Christine. Christine, are you with us? Did I see that you were here? Did I see that? No, maybe no. Is there anybody in here that I could cover live? Emily. Emily, is that, yeah, Emily Smith, there you go. I'll do you. Right there. All right, Emily, great work here. Great work. Let me, you know what, let me just split those with those two. And Emily. There we go. Let's put that here. All right. Lots of great stuff happening here. Lots of great stuff happening here. I'm just going to try to move that. There you go. Okay, so first of all, very complex image. So nice challenge here. I think what's working well, well, proportions seems to be pretty close. The movement is great. Colors, when it comes to the red, you have lots of different like hues. It's missing a little bit of purple for me, but overall I think you're there. Um, what's missing the most to me is the subtlety in the anatomy of the face. Right now, the face that you created looks a little flat. There's only one value. We're missing the cheekbones. We're missing the chin. We're missing the highlights on the forehead, although I think it's makeup, but either are. We're missing the subtleties in the shadows. Your shadows are a little desaturated. There's a lot of red around, which will definitely bounce into the fill light that you have in the environment. Think about this, right? Shadows, nothing is black, right? A shadow is not just black. A shadow is usually, there is light in the shadow, but you have what we call a key light and a fill light. And a key light is what illuminates the face from the top, and it gives like a cast shadow on the neck. And what's on the neck is less bright than the key light, but they're two lights. It's just you have one that's so bright that it illuminates the face, and the other one is so dark or so dim that it doesn't illuminate much, but it creates that red because that second fill light is full of red. It's the bounce light of the things around. You can imagine like that all those feather, they're bounce lights in the shadows. So that's missing in there. So you have like a, for what I'm seeing, it's like a bluish light and then a reddish shadows. Um, so let me just point a few things that I just said. So sorry, it's super early for me. Um, so you could do like the L recipe here, definitely for the shadow, and find something like this, and then you have like that cheekbone here that we could add. I'm going to use that color and kind of soften here. That shadow could definitely be softer, you know. Now in here it's missing definitely some red, so I'm just gonna go and try to add those red tones. Right. Trying to see if I'm getting the right one, but it's already just a little bit better. I feel like all that zone is in the shadow, really. So you can see that it's already a little bit closer. The highlights is good. It's just that needs to be a little bit more soft, I guess. Here, I'm gonna use the mixer brush tool. Just gonna soften up this, and then you have that dark colors here. That neck is supposed to kind of stop here, and then you have a highlight here, but it's supposed to be just a little bit more soft in here. And you have that line there. So just reconstructing the shapes. Think about looking for shapes first, right? I'm actually working on a new class that I'll be using for beginners. And it's just to paint an apple. And the first thing I say is you need to focus on shapes first. Shapes will help you with proportions. Try to just see, the rectangles, the squares, all of those things, and kind of see the angles. Here I'm going to add some more contrast here, so it pops a little bit more. Just catching up with the chat. Um, shadow highlights. Jeffrey, you say something here. I feel it sometimes. That helps me is to remember to use cooler colors, shadows, and warmer highlights. That's a misconception. It's a misconception. There's no such things as cool shadows and warm lights. There is, but only in the right environment. The reason why people think that it's a universal rule that rules them all is because in the light of a day, the shadows will be cool and the light will be warm. But that's only because the sun is yellow, and what you get in the shadow is the fill light coming from a blue sky. So people think that this is the rule that rules them all, but it doesn't rule like that all the time. Like in this case, it's the opposite completely. The shadows are warm and the light is cool here. It's in the bluish. And it's an honest mistake, so don't feel bad about it. It's an honest mistake, but think about it this way: there is color in every shadow, and there is colors in every light, and it depends on the color of the light that goes into the shadow and goes into that key light. Like, let me give an example to everybody here so you understand, because I think that's a concept that it's worth. I'm explaining this concept in much more details in Illustration for Imagination. That's a program that I run once a year, which, spoiler alerts to you guys, I'm going to open it next month. So if you want to participate, just keep your eyes on your email. I'm going to send emails about it very soon. But think about this way: if I had like just a gray ball here, I'll put a new layer, just a gray ball here, and I create a new layer, I put it here. All right, think about it. I got the sunlight, right, and it's gonna have some yellow on it, right? And then I have a cast shadow. Let me just grab this here. I have a cast shadow here of my light. Okay. I'm just gonna put it. I'll put it just the same color here. I have a cast shadow of the light. Okay. So most people look at this and they think this is correct. Well, there's one thing missing here: is if the only light source that I have is the sun, then everything else is going to be yellow. Think about it this way: the gray that you see there, the gray bluish that you see there, is not covered by the yellow light, or the sunshine in this case. Okay, if I were to take out the yellow light to the sunshine in this case, what would you have? This is what you would have, right? You would have everything in blue, because it would be covered in blue. You would not even have that, right? It would be blue. Think about it this way: it's like, or you know what? It's not the best of example. Let me give you something even better. So the idea here is that you have the blue of the sky that comes into it. You know what? Let me just put some lines here. Sorry, I'm trying to explain something too fast and it's not working. So think about it this way: you have the sunlight, right? Let's create a new layer on top of this. Not that. You have the sun that goes here, right? That bounces, and then you have the terminator here. It goes on all that line here, and it also covers everything here, like everything here. But you also have the blue sky that covers everything, right? But the blue sky is not strong enough to fight against the sun. The sun is much brighter than the bounce light from the sky, but in the shadow it's still there, because in the shadow you don't have any sunlight. You only have the blue sky. And so that's the reason. Hopefully this is clear. Let me know in the chat if it's clear. What you have in the shadows that looks cool is because it's the sky. It's blue, and blue is cool. But if my sky were to be purple, or green or whatever, let's say my sky is green, okay? Then what you would have, I'm gonna put those two together. Wait, why am I not able to merge them because of that? Merge that, put that here. Then what you would have, if my light would be green, is the shadow would be green. Obviously, it would not be like that. Let's give me that darken shadow. The shadow would be green, And then what you have here is it's greenish. It's kind of coolish, right? So you would have cool shadow again. But if there was any warmer color, like a red, that would be warm and warm. So all that to say that the temperature depends on the color of the light that both is in the key light and the fill light. I should have said that in the beginning, but hopefully this is clear. Makes sense? All right, cool. Thank you so much. I feel like I went like to explain this one. But anyway, all right. So anyway, let's go back to this one here. So that's the reason why this has red, because you have a lot of red light bouncing around in your shadows right now, and that's your fill light. So let's continue here. But yeah, like I was saying, it's a very honest mistake. I think everybody thinks about this because also we tend to study the masters, and the masters, they didn't have any studio. You know what I mean? They only had the light and the sky, the sun and the sky. That's all they had. They didn't have like all sorts of lights to help them, you know. So when they were doing studies or painting of anything, the warm light and the cool shadow made sense. So anyway, all right, so let me continue here. So I'm not gonna do the makeup here, okay? But obviously, like, this is more red. It should be more red. But beside that, what we're trying to do is to, to build the form, right? So just think about it this way. You would have definitely more shadow here. And then that kind of merge there a little bit. Goes down, and I would probably take my time more if I had to, but the idea is this: just creating some form here. Like you have like a shadow here that needs to be placed. So just try to think about the anatomy here, the highlights, where they're supposed to go. Like you have like a ball of light here. You have a little bit more of a highlight there as well. You have definitely a highlight on the nose here. All of those things will help you with form, and I think that's what's missing. Right now it's a little bit flat. So that's one thing. Shape-wise, think about how to measure things. Right? If you're looking at the chin, I'm just going to take some white here. The chin stops here. You have that gap here. Look here. Oh, it's about the same actually. Whoops. Still feel like there's something more. It's the angle of the mouth. Like if you look at the angle here, if I look at this angle versus this angle, all of that face needs to be just pushed a little bit. Just gonna make a copy, put that together, and I'm gonna go to liquify. I'm gonna go to liquify and just kind of push it a little bit to get the right angle here. I just play with all this. I push the nose a little bit. I feel like the forehead could be flatter too while I'm at it. Do this. So getting the right angle here would be good. And I'm not gonna add the feathers, but obviously there's like, there's some work here to be done. You could stay very loose also, like, and create just like just a few feathers here and there, and then play with the light. And just add those feathers. I like the expressive movement that you have. Maybe use the mixer brush tool in the mix. Sorry, that's my door. It's broken. It keeps making that noise. Maybe using the mixer brush here to just kind of brush in the sense of your feathers is going to help with the movement and all. That's one thing. And then try to add some highlights, some shadows that are more crisp to add some contrast. Right now it feels a little bit soft all around. So having just like those kind of casted shadows like this, for example, you see, like just a little bit of casted shadows at the right places and highlights will help to just bring some stuff. Obvious things like the ear here, it's supposed to be here, and all of that. Like I'm not gonna go into details here. I'm just gonna try to work with what you gave me already. Those are the comments that I would say about what I have right now. So just rework the structure of the face, the anatomy, lighting, having those shadows with the right colors. That will fix what you already have created. And then just keep on pushing it. I think you have it in the right direction. Like I was saying, I really like the movement of it all. So this is great. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Because I only have participants and more texture, it's a feather. Well, that's great. We are starting a new monthly challenge in about 2 days, and it's going to be all about stylization portraits. So you could definitely work on this one and try to make it your own. You have already like a good start. Maybe just find a way maybe to make it your own, and that could be your entry for next month's challenge. So yeah, you got a great start there. Uh, and yeah, Cynthia is absolutely right. One thing that we should probably do as a group is do a lot more of those 30-day challenge. Having the XFX sheets really helps. Working just 10, 20, 30 minutes a day would be like amazing, but anything between 10 and 20 minutes, which it's probably doable for anybody at any time, no matter how busy. I know 9 kids is a lot, but hopefully you can find a 20 minutes for yourself and be able to to just push this one 20 minutes a day for 30 days. Someone does the math, please, but yeah, I'm assuming it's a few hours to be able to complete this image. So anyway, thank you so much for sharing, and hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to mask this. All right, for the rest, I don't remember seeing anybody in the chat, so I'm going to go with the work of Christine here. And let me go check, Christine, if you were asking for something. Christine, say hi, I'm new to this platform. Hi, Christine, if you're looking at the replay or if you're in the chat, either are. It's enthusiast for my free times. I'm going to use Procreate, and I would like to know what aspect I should pay more attention to or change in the future practice. For some constructive advice. Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's look at this. First of all, there's a lot of good thing happening here, I think. I like that you have almost like you almost have a complementary scheme only. I like that the green of the tree is attracting our attention. You also have the contrast of the mood. Maybe those two clash a little bit. I think the first thing we could work on this one is think about what is our focal point and how we can make it clearer. Because you have a few things here that clash in terms of attracting our attention. You got the moon, which has a lot of contrast right now, and it's a round shape in the middle of an empty space. It always attracts the eye quite a bit. Then you have the tree, which has very saturated colors, which also attract the eye a lot. And then you have the character that also attracts us because it's a character, and that's just the way human beings are. We see silhouettes and faces very easily. There's a lot of contrast on the character too. And then you have your signature, which is a blue that you don't have anywhere. It's a middle almost of your piece. That is quite distracting, to be honest. You also have those birds here, but that's fine. The rest is on. So you have a few things that are kind of clashing in terms of like composition. You have a lot of contrast in the background. All right, so let me go just like and have a general here. So first of all, if you have your character right here, okay, right there, that's probably like one of the things that you want to see the most. That tree here is super important here. Either or, what you could do is take it off completely, but if you want to keep it, which we could definitely, I would add more trees. If you add more trees, I don't know if those are supposed to be trees, but if you add more trees in the foreground, for example, I'll try to do that. In the foreground, say like that's another tree here, and maybe there's another smaller tree there. In the foreground, I'm going to try to add just enough of them that, like, maybe there's another one coming from, like, maybe from there. If you add enough of them, basically the repetition of the trees will make them less important. It's like this. If you put one element of something, it becomes a focal point naturally because there's only one to look at. If you put a few of them, then it becomes almost just like a pattern or a repetition of some sort, and you won't fix on that. You will fix on the one thing after that. So after that, you will have the moon, which is one thing. You have the character. So at least we're eliminating one of the things that is distracting us, right? So you would have like whatever tree you have there. So I'm just going to add that here. And let's have another one right here. Okay. Obviously, I'm not making the best of my work here, but just think about the concept for now. And then maybe like just a few more things here, whatever. So that's one thing. I could maybe add just a bit more contrast on this one. Just adding some more lights. That's one thing. These here are very distracting as well. I'm not sure what I would do with this. Probably I'm just gonna add another tree here. I think that makes sense. So now we have a lot of trees, so the trees don't become a focal point. So that's very good about this. You have the fact that are very saturated right now, but that I'll do. I'm just going to add a, I'm going to add just a color layer here. I'm going to take that blue because you have the orange of the background, so the complementary color of it would probably be the blue. So I'm just going to add some blue on it. Plus, it's a night scene, so it makes a lot of sense. So we've got like a bluish green kind of thing. So that will be one thing. Let me move your signature here. Just going to make a copy of that. Let's slap it in a corner. That's one thing. Okay. And if I were to desaturate it already, well, that's, yeah, I would just redo the signature into something like, let me just take it out, okay? But redo your signature and put it in grayscale. But for now, I'm going to take it out because it's attracting the attention too much. Right. Let me make a copy of that so I don't screw it up. Hang on. Sorry, let me go back one step. Copy that. Pale that. All right, cool. So there's that. Then the other thing I was seeing, do that, is the moon. Now I love that there's like a moon, but I feel like the contrast could be toned down. So I'm just gonna take out the contrast a little bit of it all. Maybe not completely all, but just, maybe there's like some clouds going in front of the moon like this. And you have some pieces of it. It's very sharp too. I'm gonna just kind of maybe blur a little bit the edges by using the mixer brush tool, especially the ones that are like in the cloud. So it feels like there's just a piece. Other thing I was seeing is there's a lot of contrast on your rock here, and because they're far away, the contrast will be diminished for two reasons. A, you're going to have some atmospheric perspective, which is basically particles in the air, that when you have things that are far away, that particle, which is like a gray white-ish most of the time, will just tone down every contrast. And because it's also like moonlight, there is something clashing here because you have the moon in front of you, but you have clearly a light source. Clearly a light source coming from here. Does that make sense? From here, that eliminates that ground, which in this case is a little bit weird. But let's let it go for now. Let's just work with what we have. I feel like all of this should have less contrast. those rock and probably be just a little bit darker as they are in the background, because this is a night scene. Like this here would be just a little bit toned down. Probably that I could use the color layer here and kind of put everything over there a little bit more bluish, and then closer to us would be just a little bit more orange as it's closer, although it's still in the same environment. And there's a lot of, think about it, the same concept that I've been thinking about, the blue sky, which is a night sky right now, we'll put some blue on everything because that's the fill light on everything. So every time you have a shadow, like here, you're gonna have some blue in it, you know, because it's in the shadow, and the shadow will cast. Except for when you have that, you'll have that moonlight, which could be a little bit warmer. Then again, not super warm, but it could be one thing. Then you have also the actual color of the ground, which if it's like a ground that's like yellow orange, it's going to also do that. These are all concepts that here I'm just putting on top of it. Obviously, like, you have to put some love to this illustration afterwards and just take those concepts and push it with them. But hopefully everything that I see here just kind of makes sense. You know, from there you just kind of probably want to push your colors a little bit more and change your color palette to fit whatever you're trying to paint. But I'm not going to push it too much. Let me just see what I have, and hopefully the explanations will be working. Put that, add that, delete that, apply. So we went from there to there. And what I want you to focus on here is, obviously I didn't make a better illustration here in any way, but hopefully the concepts that I've been telling you are making sense. At this point, it's still missing, I think, the actual focal point, because the moon acts as a focal point. And for that, you would probably need to add just a little bit more highlights on it. You have the moon in the distance that would probably like hit that character and kind of give it maybe like a rim light could help. That could be one thing. But then you would have probably the same thing on the tree, on those branches, and depending on it. So it's, what I would do is, first of all, try to have references, because this is a very complicated illustration, by the way. It's zero easy. But you would have all those highlights on the leaves that would bounce based on the angle of the light source that comes from the moon, and that will bring certain element to the surface, you know. And so you have so much lights happening in this illustration that it becomes very complicated to actually render it all and make it look realistic. Does that make sense? If you guys are in the chat, let me know if that makes sense. Otherwise, I can try to just push a little bit more. But to be honest, if I were to do this illustration, I would probably start it from scratch. Think about your light direction, A. Then think about your color scheme, 2. And while you're making your composition, you need to think about your focal point here. What will be your focal point? Because all of those things otherwise will clash. But yeah, hopefully this is making sense. And I'm going to take out those birds. I don't think you need them. Personally, I think they're distracting. And probably that I would use those clouds if I were you, and try to have something that is a little bit more like that has, whoops, that has like some direction in it. Scroll says, how would you highlight the man to make him the focal point? Um, well, already having that light source on it would definitely help. What you could have is just have like a thicker highlight on it. And I'm adding white here. It's not the best at all, but it adds the best contrast here. So just to give you an example, but probably like based on the clothing, the hair, all of those things will have different colors. But what they will all have is that contrast, you know. So that's one thing. And then to make sure that it pops even more, like I was saying, this is a night scene, but what I would do is, because your ground is right now, you know, I'm just gonna put that under it. If your ground is darker in front of you, then whatever is here is gonna pop more, right? So it's a question of contrast. Think about it. Whenever you want to put something into the light, or into your focal point, it's either contrast of light, values, line work, direction. Contrast is a word that you use for so many things, right? There's so many different contrasts in a piece. Contrast in shape, contrast in so many things. And so what you want to do is add contrast to it. Having conversion line is one thing as well you could have. But in this case, I think the contrast in light and value would be the best. Cynthia says, maybe change the color of his clothes a bit too, something not brown. Yeah, that would be another thing. You could have, for example, you could have the backpack as a dark reddish, and then, you know, as the moon goes on it, here on top you would have like a highlight of some red, and just that little bit of red will attract your eye quite a bit, because it becomes a spotlight almost of some sort, just grabbing your attention. And then, yeah, those are the kind of things that you would think. Maybe the pants are darker, but maybe it's like, maybe she has, I don't know, I'm trying to think about another color. Maybe she's like pink and pink, maybe blue. Maybe she has some more blue into her clothing. Like maybe she's like, maybe everything else is desaturated, for one example, and she is saturated, right? And so you would have, let me go here, you would have that saturated blue that comes on your highlights. Maybe she's all with like an orange suits here, but what comes in the light has a highlight. And then the same thing with her hair. Maybe like maybe she has blonde hair or whatever. And then the highlight would be like almost blonde white or whatever. Saying whatever too much. But that's the idea, right? And now we have contrast into value, contrast into saturation, and all those things. But like, I want to scare anybody here. This is a complicated illustration. There's so many things to think about before you have a render. If you were to do this, try to break it down. I think that's the aspect. I think we're all doing the same mistake when we start you know, an illustration that we're really like excited about. We're like, I'm gonna make that amazing landscape desert with like palm trees, and that's great, but just be realistic on your skill levels. If you're at that skill level, what I would do, first of all, try to do a few thumbnails. Try to do a few thumbnails where you place those different, you know, those different mountains and different spots. You see where the moon can be. You play with it. You do a few of those to practice your composition skills. Then you want to play with colors on those thumbnails to create that mood, seeing what kind of colors work, You established your things there. Then think about the different things that are in there, the character itself, the trees, the rock itself, the texture of the rocks, those clouds in the background, trying to paint a few clouds to understand, all right, so what can I do um, to create some movement within the clouds, right? And all of those things. And if you practice them one by one, like I didn't finish that here, but I was trying to kind of establishing like a cloud that goes into the distance and comes here. Maybe like you have the moon just popping out of there. Does that make sense? But you know, by practicing those one by one, you have practice with each of them, and then doing such a complicated illustration won't be so difficult, right? Think about light source. Like I was saying here, that ground here looks very bright, and it's not necessarily completely a bad thing, because as an illustrator, what you can do is just imagine light source everywhere to help you to just boost, and you can boost them. But right now, this one is so bright that it feels like there's a light source coming here, when it very feels like the light source is right there. So what do you do then? Maybe there's no moon. Maybe you don't put any moon here. You only have your clouds. And then you can imagine that your light source, the moon, is in that corner here. And you can imagine that then your trees here will have that cast shadow on the ground here. Same thing here, you know, they will have a cast shadow here. Maybe all that part here, because it's on the shadow completely, all that comes in the shadow here, and you have just that spot here, and then maybe that's, I'm just inventing here, but maybe that character now is not there. It is in the middle here, and it's in tiny, and it's casting a shadow on the side because it's there in the middle, and that character doesn't exist no more. You know, just rethinking things before you actually paint them, and think about all those things. And obviously, if you're, depending on your level, all of those things needs their own practice, right? And this is why you should go back to the academy, go check the lighting module. I just uploaded a month or two ago a new part of the lighting module where I talk about the light theory. Light theory is one of the things the most important when you want to play with realism, but also if you want to play with like the focal points, right? Having the right contrast with the lights and all this, super important. I will continue building into that light module, because I want to add also the light and colors. Those two things, as you saw today when I explained the warm and cool light and all of that, they are paired together, right? Light, the only reason why you see color is because of light. Without any light, you don't see any colors. So all of those things are super important. Anyway, so I just want to express here, I've been pitching a lot of concept and theory into that thing, and at the end, I didn't, you know, created a nice image. Let me just put that all together, right? The image was already very nice in terms of contrast, in terms of composition. It's nice. There's a lot of things happening, right? And I didn't create necessarily a better image, but I've been talking about a lot of theory that all needs to be worked one at a time to create a better illustration. And like I was saying, if I were to redo this one, I would redo it from scratch by just really focusing on one step at a time. Start with the composition. Composition is already pretty good on this one. Then think about your light source and grayscale. Just try to think about, all right, what is making sense? Add your color to it. Think about a very nice color scheme. I think the I'm looking for the word here. Complementary color scheme here works very well. All of those things, right? And practice them on a small format, and then do that big projects. It's literally how a professional artist will do it anyway, obviously to a higher level of skills, but to a certain extent, they will start with a thumbnail, they will start with a sketch. They already have assimilate all those theory that you need to practice first, but these are steps you can add into your workflow. All right, cool. Yeah, I'll try to create more landscapes. If you want a cool one that I created recently that was from a reference photo, so it was not from imagination, but still can really help because it's broken down into like basic shapes. I just created something on YouTube. So if you go check the Paintable YouTube, you'll see it was a beach landscapes that was part of the community challenge. So anyway, I want to say thank you for Christine for sharing your work. Hopefully this was helpful. I hope I didn't um, discourage you in any way. There is just a lot of things to work on this image, and it's not because it's not a good image like I was saying from the start, but obviously to make it better, what you need to do is take a step back here. Take a step back, don't do such complicated illustration, and try to break down those topics one by one. You already have a proof that you're able to do great images, but if you want to do like even better, you have to break it down one by one. All right, next we have another landscape, this one from Edvard. Edvard, thank you so much for sharing your work. Let me see what you were saying. You were saying, hello, David. Hello to you. Usually I'm in a career I'm directly related to the lesson of the DPA, but this time you did something spontaneous, which is the illustration. Sorry, that's a huge paragraph. So it's pure improvisation, work with Corel Painter, strokes, design principle, and you're quite satisfied with the effects through the strokes and create the illusion of real strokes. Yeah, definitely looks pretty real. I know the composition and painting is not very ideal. But it's not very... All right, cool. Well, let me see what you have here. Dragon 10 tutorial would be awesome. All right, Irida, I'll think about that for the next one for sure. All right, Advert. First of all, yeah, definitely. It looks very traditional looking, although as digital artists, we can see that it's digital, but it has that quality. I think it would look even more real if you didn't had your signature like this on top of it. With the lines here, it's clashing. Not a huge deal. Just wanted to point it out. There's so many things here that works well. First of all, you see within the distance that it goes into the distance. So you have the more pale values coming in, coming out. And just realize that you guys maybe are not seeing me at the best of. I'm very pale, huh? Just give me a second. Give me a second here. How about that little thing that I'm going to snap on my camera? Just give me a second. I'm having a hard time here. I should have put that at the beginning. There we go. For the photographer of you guys, this is called an ND filter. And what it does is it's adding some darker tone to my lens so you guys don't see me just white. Hopefully this is better. So what was I saying? I was saying that so yeah, so we see in the distance, so that's great. I really like that. It gives us the depth of the illustration. I like the movement as well. There's a movement here, and I think the leaves for a certain extent are following this. Like you have like that swoop here with this, and you have to a certain extent a little bit of a swoop here. I think that could be one thing that could be designed a little bit more in that direction, pushing even more that movement, such as maybe having even the trunk of the tree maybe slightly angled. Then again, I'm thinking that maybe the contrast in the direction here works very well. But maybe if you have this very straight, then maybe having the branches maybe could be like just like a little bit going a little bit more that way, and then the leaves a little bit more that way as well. Could have just help us with that flow. So that's one thing. The other thing is here is a little bit confusing here, that section right there. As this is very clear, this is very clear, then it comes here and becomes that brownish, which works as a painting. Those colors are they work well together. It's a gradient from, you know, an analogous color scheme sort of, um, that works within a uh, some of a keep forgetting that word today, complementary color scheme. So these works very well, but it feels like as it's getting closer, you should have more details. Um, so you know, like having just sharper, maybe sharper leaves here would attract the eye a little bit more. I'm painting on your painting, right? Having sharper leaves to a certain extent by boosting either the contrast or the value of certain things. Same thing in the tree. I feel like if you were to have just a few more sharper leaves, it would just attract the eye a little bit more on those branches, which at the end of the day becomes your focal point, right? That tree, those branches, those leaves are your focal point. So having just that will detach the background, and then that blurriness here would work better. But because it's red, also it's clashing a little bit, and then you have that yellow. Like there's a lot of things that they work well, but at the same time, it's missing. To me, it's missing. It's too abstract. It's too abstract. And it's like the clash between being abstract and not being abstract, because your tree is not abstract, your mountains are not abstract, but then you have that weird ground here where it's like just a smudge of color, which looks good by itself. So I'm not trying to diminish the work here, but it's missing storytelling to me. Is there grass? Is the grass red? Is that sand? Is that whatever it is, it needs to be defined, I think, a little bit more to me. But it works well as is. You know, I'm just trying to give you direction here. But as is, I think it's already working well. If you want to keep it like more like an abstract kind of work. But those are the two things I would work on it. I would add some more contrast to the leaves to just bring the tree a little bit closer to us. Definitely. Just a few more in the foreground here and there. Same thing with the leaves at the bottom, maybe just having just a few more to attract our eye. And then I would just try to figure it out. What do you want to do here? Especially with that green thing here. Because if it goes from green to brown here, then just keep that concept in, and then maybe have like a patch of green here in the foreground, and then all of this is just kind of the same color. But then I would just kind of, sorry, I'm going over your signature here. It's not because I want to, it's just express the movement. I feel like this then is less confusing than this, where we're not quite sure what it is, because it's closer to us. It should have detail on it, and then right now it's just like it's just a stroke. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat if you have any question about this. But otherwise, yeah, as a landscape that express movement, I think it's very well done. And thank you for sharing, Edward. Don't want to miss anybody here. I think I'm good. Sierra. Sierra, I don't know if you are with us today. If you are, great work. I was looking at this. Obviously, the one thing I would say, you give me a very small image when you upload it. And because it's small image, it's very pixelated on my screen right now. But for the people in the chat right now, can you believe that that's the picture and that's the illustration? I'm blown away by the amount of details and the amount of proportions. Like the control of your proportions is great, really. I like the stylization also. You went with like bold shapes. Maybe it's a bit flat in the values of the clothing. Let me just try to put them side by side here. Okay. I think that's probably where you could have worked a little bit more. Let me also see if you have any questions about this. You're saying, could you give me a brief explanation of the creating mood with lights lesson and local color lesson? Darkin is a great artist, and I love to paint with him, but I learned nothing watching him. It's a bit harsh, but okay. Anything extra I can get from you after to lesson would be great. Sure. Okay. Well, I can talk about the lighting of this. Let's break it down. All right. Let's look at the lighting of this first. So you have a warmer color to the. Let me just come here. You have a warmer color to, whoops, to the left. In the pinkish zone, you have clearly a cooler blue color here on the other side. And so that's a basic understanding, right? So then again, in this particular tutorial, what he talks about is how certain colors will act in ways that you would not imagine when they are under other colors. And it's a perfect example of what we were talking earlier. Now we have two cool colors in this illustration. It's not warm and cool, it's two cool colors. And if you look at the apple, the orange here, there's not much change in the orange. You see a little bit of pink in the highlights, like here around it. Here it becomes almost like desaturated, right? So it's a lot about observation, right? Having all the rules of colors is beyond this world. But here you have two distinguished light source. They're bouncing, and then you have like the bounce light, like that green here. You see how that shadow becomes even more saturated compared to the orange, and that's because a blue on a green will become almost more saturated, where the orange and the green, they clash together. And that's all about experimenting, about understanding colors. There's no universal rule, if you want. Hey Flame, sorry that you're late. I actually already covered your work, so you have to wait for the replay. I'm sorry. So let's continue here. So if I'm looking at this, what you could have done is either push the colors even more, knowing this, right? I'm just going to do something very quick just to show what I meant, but I'm going to take a, I'm just going to take a overlay layer here with a saffron brush. I'm going to take a pink. I'm just going to paint over everything. Obviously, this is not how you should do it, but just so you see even more. Like, see how I'm pushing here? So it adds a lot more light here, a lot more pink in the light. And then I could have done the same thing with the blue here by pushing even more, a little bit more. But even that with the overlay blending mode, you can see that it desaturates quite a bit here. But anyway, that's one thing you could have done. Just push a little bit more of the colors here. The one thing that's missing, like I was saying on your image that you don't see here, is that blue light on the garment. Because you have, and I'm trying to really give you like a good example, but here, I can get back here. Try to deconstruct it. So here you have a highlight made of this light source, right? That's the highlight of this light source. Here you have a highlight with this light source. And here you have a shadow that is neither touched by neither of those light sources, right? So if you think about it, you have three light sources here. You have the pink, you have the blue, and then you have whatever fill light you have in this shadow right here, which seems to be greenish. That could be because of the bounce light of his room, any colors that he had in his room. If the original light source was in the bluish and then he had some green on the walls or whatever, that could be it, right? Here you have a little bit more of that. It's a little bit more orange. You see, like, it's orange compared to the green that we had here. And it's in the shadow as well. And the reason why it's orange is because you get bounce light bouncing into that shadow from that orange. And that's the reason. So think about it this way. Everything that gets light on becomes a light source by itself. So the apple becomes a light source, the orange becomes a light source, this becomes a light source. It all becomes light source as a light source bounce out of them. That's the reason why you have also like, or it's one of the reasons why you have like a rim of like bluish here that's bouncing on top of it. So you have like the light source direct and the bounce light from this, which is basically a mirror when you think about it. Then you have the reflections here, but that's reflections. It's a little bit different. But if you look at the shadows here, for example, you have a little bit more blue. And the reason is probably because you have bounce light, that pink goes on that thing, bounce back in the shadow, and transform this shadow into a little bit more pink compared to this place here, where you get none of those. So light source becomes a lot more complicated than this. What you did in your case, let me go back to your illustration. Let me take out what I did here. What's missing is, I think it's this. It's that obvious colors, especially here in the garment. Like I'm gonna use an actual multiply here, but very pale color. And you would need, whoops, it's not enough. Am I? I'm on. But give me a second. Multiply. There you go. You would need that bluish colors right there to kind of punch all of this. That's what's missing here, and probably a little bit more here as well, right? So trying to push them a lot. That's pretty good already. That's pretty good already. So basically what I did here. Hi, Christine. Once again, I'm sorry, you guys. Happened to come right after I already covered your work. You'll have to wait for the replay to see the critique. But here, that's, you know, pushing those two light sources. Think about it. As an illustrator, understanding your scene is one thing, and then you don't want to copy it. You want to understand it, and then you want to push the things that you want to do. In this case, I would definitely push the light source because it's an exercise about light source, right? Understanding that these are pushed in the shadows, these are pushed in the light source, and all of this will just help you later on to understand principle. If you're looking, like we were talking earlier about warm light, cool shadows, if you're looking at the masters, any masters, look at the scenes that they're doing during the day. Their shadows are blue, their highlights are yellow and orange. And that's just because, like I was saying, the sky is the fill light, it's blue, and the light is yellow. In this case, what we have, it's a studio light. And so if you have a light source here, it's going to fill up certain spaces. In this case, probably the shadow here, would not be that pink. So I could probably like take out that here maybe a little bit. It would not be that pink, but it would not be also the color that you have right there. It's about understanding your environment. There's no right or wrong. Like what I did here could be fine. What you did could be fine. Because the information that you miss in this one is what's the third light source. We know the pink from the left, we know the blue from the right, but we don't know the fill light that comes and covers all of that. And I'm assuming it's not neutral. It's probably something in a greenish value. So what you put here was actually fine. It works well, actually. But as an illustrator, you can push things to make them just to your own taste. So that's what I would say. So hopefully that was helpful. If you guys have any question, let me know. But thanks for sharing. Sierra, was that the only thing left for today? I think I covered everybody. Let me just double check. I covered Flame. Sorry, Flame, you'll see that later. I covered Christine. Also, Christine, I covered you a minute ago. Edward, yeah, I think I covered everybody. All right, well, that was the last one. Let me see if there's more. And that was the last one. All right, let me get back to you guys and wish you a good day as I'll let you go. So thank you so much for the people that were there. That was awesome. There was a lot of activity today, so that was great. Um, yeah, I'll see you for the next Q&A in a month. Otherwise, we're starting a new challenge in a few days. And this one is going to be very special. The month of August is going to be very special. We're going to have the 1 week portrait challenge open and offered to everybody. Obviously, all the students of the DPA are more than welcome, but also everybody else. It's a great way to be with the community and do some portraiture. We're also going to open the doors for illustration for imagination. So this is another big one I'm doing once a year. And the challenge for this month in the Q&A is all about portraiture. It's stylizing a portrait. So that's going to be all basically portrait character related. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you for everybody that joined in. Sorry for Flame and Christine that were late, but you'll be able to see the replay and see the critique that I gave on your piece. So yeah, have a good day, have a good night for some of you, and I'll talk to you guys in the community. Ciao, guys.